Okay, everybody, it's time for another chapter. We just finished reading about the horrible blood bottler, one of the evil human-eating giants. And now he's gone, and Sophie and the BFG appear to be safe for now. Now this chapter is called Frobscottle and Whiz Poppers. By now, Sophie was beginning to feel not only extremely hungry, but very thirsty as well. Had she been at home, she would have finished her breakfast long ago. Are you sure there's nothing else to eat around here except for disgusting, smelly snozcumbers? Not even a fizzwinkle, answered the BFG. In that case, may I have a little water? She asked. Water, cried the BFG, frowning mightily. What is water? We drink it, Sophie said. What do you drink? Frobscottle, said the BFG. All giants is drinking frobscottle. Is it as nasty as your snozcumbers? Sophie asked. Nasty? Cried the BFG. Never is it nasty. Frobscottle is sweet and jumbly. He got up from his chair and went to a second huge cupboard. He opened it and took out a glass bottle that must have been 6 feet tall. The liquid inside it was pale green and the bottle was half full. Here is Frobscottle, he cried, holding the bottle up proud and high, as though it contained some rare wine. Delumptuous, fizzy Frobscottle, he shouted. He gave it a shake and the green stuff began to fizz like mad. But look, it's fizzing the wrong way, Sophie cried. And indeed it was. The bubbles, instead of traveling upward and bursting at the surface, were shooting downward and bursting at the bottom. A pale green frothy fizz was forming at the bottom of the bottle. What on earth is you meaning the wrong way? Asked the BFG. Well, in our fizzy drinks, Sophie said, the bubbles always go up and burst at the top. Upwards is the wrong way, cried the BFG. You mustn't ever having bubbles going upward. That is the most flush-bunking rubble I is ever hearing. Why do you say that? You was asking me why, he said, waving the enormous bottle around as though he were conducting an orchestra. You was actually meaning to tell me that you cannot see why it is a scrawty mistake to have the bubbles flying up instead of down. You say it's flush-bunking, now you say it's scrawty. Well, which is it? Sophie asked politely. Both, said the BFG. It is flush-bunking and scrawty to let bubbles go upward. If you can't see why, you must be quacky as a duckhound. By Ringo, your head is so full of frog squinkers and buzzwangers, I is frittered if I is knowing that you can think at all. Well, why shouldn't the bubbles go upward? Sophie asked. I will explain, the BFG said, but tell me first, what is the name your Frobscottle goes by? Well, one is Coke, Sophie said. Another is Pepsi. We have lots of them. And the bubbles is all going up? They all go up, Sophie said. Catastorous, said the BFG. Upgoing bubbles is a catastorous disastrophe. Would you please tell me why? Sophie asked. If you listen carefully, I will try to explain. But your brain is so full of bug whiffles, I doubt you will understand. I'll do my best, Sophie said patiently. Very well then. When you was drinking this cokey drink of yours, it is going straight down in your tummy. Is I right or is I left? It's right, Sophie said. And the bubbles is going in your tummy, right or left? Right again, Sophie said. And the bubbles is fizzing upward? Of course. Which means, said the BFG, that they will all come swish-whiffling up your throat and out of your mouth and make a foulsome, belchy burp. Well, that's often true, Sophie said, but what's wrong with a little burp now and then? It's sort of fun. Burping is filthsome, said the BFG. Us giants is never doing it. But with your drink, Sophie said. What was it you called it? Frobscottle, said the BFG. With Frobscottle, Sophie said, the bubbles in your tummy will go downward, and that could have a far nastier result. Why nasty? Said the BFG, frowning. Well, because, Sophie said, blushing a little, if they go down instead of up, then they'll come out of somewhere else with an even louder, ruder noise. "A whiz-popper?" cried the BFG, beaming at her. "Us giants is making whiz-poppers all the time. Whiz-popping is a sign of happiness. It is music in our ears. You is not telling me that a little whiz-popping is forbidden among human beings." "It's considered extremely rude," Sophie said. "But you is whiz-popping, is you not, now and again?" "Well, everyone's whiz-popping, if that's what you call it," Sophie said. "Kings and queens are whiz-popping, presidents are whiz-popping, little babies are whiz-popping, glamorous film stars are whiz-popping. But where I come from, it's not polite to talk about it." "Redunculous!" cried the BFG. "If everyone is making whiz-poppers, why not talk about it? We is now having a swiggle of this delicious frobscottle, and you will see the happy results." The BFG took the bottle and shook it vigorously. The pale green stuff fizzed and bubbled. He removed the cork and took a tremendous gurgling swig. "Ah, it's glummy," he said. "I love it." For a few minutes, the big friendly giant stood quite still, and a look of absolute ecstasy began to spread over his long, wrinkly face. Then, suddenly, the heavens opened up, and he let fly with a series of the loudest and rudest noises Sophie had ever heard in her life. They reverberated around the walls of the cave like thunder, and the glass jars rattled on their shelves. But most astonishing of all, the force of the explosions actually lifted the enormous giant clear off his feet like a rocket. "Whoopee!" he cried when he came down to earth again. "Now that is whiz-popping for you." Sophie burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. "Have some yourself," said the BFG, tipping the neck of the enormous bottle towards her. "Don't you have a cup?" Sophie said. "No cups, only bottle." Sophie opened her mouth, and very gently the BFG tipped the bottle forward and poured some of the fabulous frobscottle down her throat. And oh, how delicious it was! It was sweet and refreshing. It tasted of vanilla and cream, with just the faintest trace of raspberries on the edge of the flavor, and the bubbles were wonderful. Sophie could actually feel them bouncing and bursting all around her tummy. It was an amazing sensation. It felt as though hundreds of tiny people were dancing a jig inside her and tickling her with their toes. It was lovely. "Just lovely!" she cried. "Just wait," said the BFG, flapping his ears. Sophie could feel the bubbles traveling lower and lower in her tummy, and then suddenly, inevitably, the explosion came. The trumpet sounded, and she too made the walls of the cavern ring with the sound of music and thunder. "Bravo!" shouted the BFG, waving the bottle. "You was very good for a beginner. Let's have some more." All right. I love that chapter. It's so ridiculous. And it's a great excuse to make fart noises. Okay. Next time, it'll be the chapter Journey to Dream Country. We learn a little bit more about the BFG and what he does with his time. All right. Bye, everybody.